Hello and welcome to our analysis of iCAT13, which is exactly the median mock or the halfway stage mock in our All India national level mock test series for CAT. So people would have taken the first 12, formed an opinion about their strategies, their strengths, their weaknesses and how to proceed ahead. So at this stage, we decided to give them a slightly easy mock to build up their confidence and also to see how well they are doing at the midway stage of their preparation. So as I said, iCAT13 in terms of difficulty was an easy to moderate mock. Its average difficulty was around 1.85. What does that mean? We assign a difficulty level or LOD of 1, 2 or 3 to each question, which varies from easy, moderate, tough, from 1 to 3 in that sequence. So an LOD of 1.85 implies that the average difficulty of each question was a little less than 2 or little less than moderate. But that's average. Before we go into number of good attempts for this mock, I would like to go into the sectional analysis for each of the sections, starting with verbal. So in verbal, we saw that this mock had an average difficulty of close to 1.9. I would say this is more or less what you can expect in CAT. So contrary to the earlier mock, which was also easy to moderate, but there we had set a higher difficulty verbal section. Here the difficulty was more or less on the lines of CAT. So what was the breakup? Once again, as always, 6 RCs, 2 RCs of 6 questions, 4 RCs of 3 questions each. What should you have attempted here? If you look at the breakup of this, you would have seen that the RCs would have formed a bell curve. There was exactly one RC which could be called easy. It was an easy to moderate RC, but it could be called easy. And there was exactly one RC which could be called tough. So everything else was purely moderate. So the whole set of RCs would have called a bell curve with easy to moderate at the left, then moderate in the center and tough at the right. How should you have attempted? The RC on freedom of religion, which would have actually seemed tough to people, was actually easy. So that is something you should have definitely tried. And it was a 6 question RC. On the other hand, the RC on Google's business model was the toughest RC of this set. So look at this contradiction and understand that this is sometimes a trap set by the examiners, where a topic which seems very user friendly or reader friendly, let me put it that way, a topic that seems very reader friendly has the toughest questions. Now everybody would want to read about Google, so it looks very easy, but it was tough. The set on freedom of religion looks tough. Oh, this is something philosophical, let's not read this, but that was easy. The remaining 4 RCs, one on mountaineering, one on the US securities crisis, one on the final treatise in the Bible, and one on the Pythagoras theorem, were all moderate. I would suggest that you should have tried 2 to 2.5 RCs out of these 4 based on your interest. So for example, if it were to be left to me, I would have probably tried to attempt the RCs on mountaineering and the Pythagoras theorem, but that is my call. Somebody else might have a different selection. In general, I would have looked at the 6 question RC on freedom of religion, mountaineering, Pythagoras and 1 or 2 questions elsewhere. So generally I would have looked at 12 questions here right away. What about the non-MCQ questions? We had the jumbled sentences, contextual odd man out, para summary as usual, but what was the difficulty level? Compared to the last mock, surprisingly, here para summary was the easiest of the lot. So this is something you should have tried. The jumbled sentences and out of context sentences were again moderate. So with good question selection, you could have attempted 4 to 5 questions here very easily. In general, in the verbal section, your good attempts would have been 11 to 12 for RC and 4 to 5 for the non-RCs. Broadly, I would say 16 attempts would be a good performance as far as this section is concerned. Let's now move on to the next section, that's DILR. So, typically DILR is the most difficult section in the CAT. Even if I look at the pure numbers as far as this mock is concerned, yes, it would appear as the most difficult section. DILR had an average difficulty of 2, exactly 2. So yes, it was the most difficult, but was it tough on a standalone basis? No. 2 corresponds to moderate. The average level that I find in the exam is somewhere between 2.2 to 2.25, which means straight away a difference of more than 10%. So I can say this was significantly easier compared to CAT. So this mock was designed in that way, that verbal at CAT level, DILR significantly easier. Now in such a mock you will find 5 to 6 sets that you can attempt. Of course you won't have time to attempt them, so you need to identify the best 4, 4.5. Which were those? There was a very peculiar case in this mock. We were able to identify 5 sets that were very doable, and the remaining 3 should just have been skipped. Which were these 5? So there was one on 8 rooms in 2 rows, and then there were some conditional questions. Yes, this should have been solved. There was one on a diluter mechanism, which was basically a question on number systems or base systems. Looked difficult but was very easy, should have been solved. There was one on numerical logic where you had train stations given and there was some data to be filled. Slightly lengthy, but again this could have been solved. One particular question was based on rock bands. Now, for serious candidates who have this knack of also going through past papers of various exams, they would have seen that this question was very similar to one of the first questions asked in the XAT 2010 or 11 paper. And I am talking about the actual exam. So in terms of the pure data, this was very similar to that XAT question which had come in 2010. Practicing these kind of past papers does help occasionally. Now why did we put this particular question here? Because we have seen in CAT that we've seen certain questions which have appeared in old NMATs or old CATs etc. come back in CAT last year. And then there was one table or one set where you had multiple tables on products in 4 countries. There you could have tried 3 to 4 questions. But broadly these 5 were the only sets worth doing. So even in an easy mock, please understand, if I am saying that if there were only 5 sets that you could have targeted, it means that the difficulty level between the sets oscillated wildly between easy to very tough. The remaining 3 sets, had you tried, this would have looked like a very tough DILR section to you. So had you looked at these 5 sets and attempted 4, 4.5, yes, you would have done very well. The number of good attempts here could have easily touched 20 had you selected these 5 sets and done them completely. Finally, we move on to the last and easiest section of not only CAT but also this mock, that is QA. The average difficulty level here was 1.65, slightly less than what you would see in the exam. So now how does my paper shape up? Verbal at par, DILR significantly easy, and Quant slightly easy or at par, which means this paper is easier compared to CAT and is designed to build your confidence. In any CAT mock or any actual CAT, I have seen there are 11 to 12 sitters or easy questions. What were the number of easy questions in this mock? If I sit down to count, this mock I could identify 17 questions that you should have definitely attempted. Now if you look at a section having 34 questions and I am telling you upfront that 17 could have been attempted, understand how easy this section would have been. Plus there was another interesting trend. If I look at 17, you will have questions from nearly every chapter. So there you won't find a trend, but sometimes, as I have pointed out to students, you can find easy questions in chunks. And there were umpteen chunks here. If I look at the data, There was question 67, 68, so that's okay, a small set. But 72 to 76 were all easy to moderate, all doable. 78 again easy. 80, 81, so some 72 to 81, 10 questions, you really had 7 to 8 easy questions to do. Again from 94 to 99, each and every question could have been attempted. So if I look at it, apart from those 1 or 2 here and there, you had one big chunk of 10 questions, one big chunk of 6 questions, but you needed to identify that. What it also means is that apart from these 17, the others would also have been in big chunks of 5-6 questions each. So you need to be very sure which chunk you are targeting. Broadly, apart from these 17, I would have been able to solve 3 to 4 other questions which would have been classified as moderate, but would be either slightly time consuming or slightly tricky based on people's preference of chapters. In general, I would say 20 to 21 questions in this section would be a good attempt. On the whole, if you were to ask me, this mock was an easy to moderate mock, tending on the easier side, with a moderate at par with CAT difficulty level for verbal, a moderate difficulty level for DILR, which would be easier compared to CAT, and an easy level for quant, which would be nearly at par with CAT. The number of good attempts here would be 16, 20 and 21. So I would say on the whole, anywhere around 57 to 59 attempts would be a good performance. With a little bit of effort in the paper and a bit of concentration, you could have even touched 60 plus attempts. On the whole, easy paper. Do well in this mock. All the best for CAT. Hope you do well. You can also view more videos of this type by subscribing to our channel. Thank you and all the best.